The argument kicked off the way they always did, over something trivial. It was a Saturday morning, and all I wanted was a quick trip to the hardware store. I was in the middle of putting up shelves in my office and needed different screws. The keys to our only car, a nice SUV, were sitting on a tray by the door, exactly where my wife, Amelia, liked them kept. I grabbed them, called out that I'd be back in an hour, and was just about to leave when I heard her voice from upstairs, sharp, commanding. "And where do you think you're going?" She stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, glaring down at me, not like a wife, but like a teacher about to hand out detention. "To the hardware store," I said evenly. "Need to grab some screws for the shelves." Amelia descended the stairs slowly, her eyes fixed on the keys in my hand. "Did you ask me if you could take the car?" For a second, I just stared at her. The question was so absurd, it almost didn't register. I'm 42, a partner at an architectural firm. I don't need anyone's permission to buy screws. "It's our car, Amelia," I said, feeling irritation stir in my chest. "It's my car," she shot back, wearing that little smirk. "The registration's in my name, the insurance too. Your name isn't on a single document for that vehicle. You get to use it as a privilege, not a right." And technically, she wasn't wrong. When we bought the car 3 years ago, her father, a financial planner who handles our money, said it was better for tax reasons to keep it in her name. Like a fool, I agreed just to avoid an argument. I paid the down payment myself, and the monthly installments came from our joint account, which I fund mostly through my salary. But on paper, yes, it was hers. Now she was waving that paper like a sword. "I just need to go to the store," I repeated, my tone firming. She extended her hand. "The keys, Michael." I didn't move. We just stood there, locked in silence. This wasn't about a car. It never was. It was about control. Her control. She dictated the money, our social life, even the thermostat setting. This was just another power play, only louder. Finally, she raised her voice. "No car keys until you learn to ask for permission. I'm not having the same fight every weekend." I looked from her hand to the keys, then up at her face, expressionless, cold. Something inside me shifted then. A quiet, final decision that had been forming for years finally snapped into place. This marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a cage, and she had just rattled the bars one time too many. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply placed the keys into her palm. "Sure," I said flatly. "You're right. I should have asked." The satisfaction on her face was almost theatrical. She believed she'd won, that she'd put me in my place. With a smug grin, she turned and walked back upstairs, leaving me standing there like a grounded teenager. What she didn't realize was that she hadn't just won an argument. She'd triggered an avalanche. Update 1. That weekend was strange. I played my part, the obedient, quiet husband. I finished the shelves using the wrong screws. I spent hours in my office pretending to read. Whenever Amelia wanted to go somewhere, I'd politely ask if I could tag along, to the grocery store, to brunch with her parents. She reveled in it, basking in her newfound authority, letting me ride along in the car I'd paid for. But while I acted beaten, my mind was spinning. I'm an architect. My whole career revolved around finding weak spots in a structure before it falls apart. Our marriage was a condemned building, and I was about to plan its demolition. Monday morning, she insisted on driving me to work. A new routine. It felt as humiliating as it sounds. "I'll pick you up at 5:30, she said, like a mother talking to her child. The moment I stepped into my office, I started setting things in motion. Step 1, regain independence. During lunch, I walked to a nearby dealership. I didn't want another SUV. I wanted something for me. I test drove a sports sedan I'd admired for years, the same one Amelia always called impractical. I leased it on the spot using my personal savings. The dealership promised to deliver it to my office garage by the end of the day. Step 2, cut off her control of the finances. After that, I headed to a completely new bank. I opened checking, savings, and investment accounts, all solely in my name. Then I logged into my company's HR portal and redirected my entire paycheck into those accounts. That was the end of my income flowing into the joint ones Amelia and her father managed. Step 3, and the biggest one, assess the damage. For years, I'd allowed Amelia's father, Richard, to oversee our investments. He's a partner at a boutique wealth management firm and had convinced me he could yield better returns. I'd even granted him power of attorney over my personal investment portfolio, the one I'd built long before I met Amelia. That trust was a colossal mistake. I called my lawyer, Ben, that afternoon. He's a bulldog who specializes in high-asset divorces. I told him everything. Ben didn't sugarcoat it. He told me to revoke Richard's power of attorney immediately and demand a full audit of every account he'd ever touched. He warned me things would get messy fast. That evening, I was standing on the curb when Amelia pulled up. She had that familiar, smug little smile. "Ready to go home?" she asked. "Actually," I said, "I think I'll drive myself." Right on cue, a flatbed truck turned into the driveway. On the back was my new car, a sleek black sedan, polished and aggressive. The driver hopped out and handed me the keys. Amelia's jaw practically hit the ground as they unloaded it. The look on her face wasn't just shock or anger, it was fear. The kind of fear that flickers in someone who just realized their reign is ending. "What is that?" she finally demanded. I held up the keys. "That," I said, "is my car, so I don't have to ask for permission." I got in, and the smell of new leather hit me. Clean, rich, perfect. I glanced over at Amelia, still sitting frozen in her SUV, staring like she couldn't process what had just happened. I gave her a small, polite wave and pulled away, leaving her stunned figure shrinking in my rearview mirror. The first explosion had gone off. Update 2. The drive home was incredible. I didn't even turn on the radio, just listened to the engine purr. It was a far better sound than the tense silence I'd grown used to at home. When I finally pulled into the driveway, she was already there, having clearly broken every speed limit between my office and our house. She stood on the porch with her arms folded tight, her face blazing with anger. "We need to talk," she said, voice low and tight. "Okay," I replied calmly, walking straight past her into the house. She followed, slamming the door behind her. "You bought a car? A $60,000 car? Without even talking to me first." "Leased it," I corrected. "And no, I didn't. I made a decision. I needed a reliable way to get to work." "Your access to the other car was conditional," she snapped. "Conditional?" I said, finally turned to face her. "You mean controlled. You didn't want courtesy, Amelia. You wanted power. And I'm done with that. The new car is just the beginning." Her anger vanished in an instant. She went pale, her voice trembling slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said evenly, "I had a very productive conversation with my lawyer today and my new bank manager. I've moved my paycheck out of the joint account, and I've revoked your father's power of attorney over my investments." Mentioning her father landed like a direct hit. She actually flinched. "You can't do that," she stammered. "My father is our financial advisor. He has a strategy for us." "He has a strategy for himself," I said coldly, "one that includes gambling with my money and keeping me in the dark. I've ordered a full audit of everything he's managed. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes to light." She just stood there, silent, rigid. She'd already lost control of the car. Now the money was slipping away, too. Her entire empire control was collapsing in a single afternoon. The next few days were silent warfare. She barely spoke to me, slamming doors and having furious phone calls with her mother. I ignored it. I was too busy. A team of forensic accountants was combing through years of Richard's records, and what they found was worse than I expected. He'd been churning my accounts, making endless trades just to pad his firm's commissions. He'd funneled a huge portion of my money into a doomed tech startup, one he secretly held a stake in. This wasn't bad management. It was theft. Then came the real bombshell a week later. The auditors discovered wire transfers from my investment account to a holding company I'd never heard of. Turns out that company owned her parents' house. Richard had used more than $200,000 of my money to pay off his mortgage. That was the last straw. With the audit report in hand, I was ready. I told Amelia to have her parents at our house on Saturday morning for an urgent financial meeting. I told her to bring their lawyer. Mine, Ben, would be there too. They arrived acting indignant and self-righteous. Richard strutted in like he owned the place, already raising his voice. This is a breach of trust, Michael. After all I've done for you. I didn't bother replying. I just nodded for Ben to begin. Ben was calm, professional, deadly. He laid everything out, charts, documents, records of illegal wire transfers. He broke down in plain language what fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty meant under the law. With every word, Richard's color drained from red to paper white. Sweat began to bead on his forehead. Amelia's mother looked like she might faint. Amelia herself just stared down at the table, shell-shocked. When Ben finished, he slid a document across the table. "Here's the offer," he said. "Michael won't press criminal charges, and he won't sue your firm, which, for the record, you'd lose. In exchange, you repay every cent you stole with interest. And Amelia," he said, turning to her, "will sign this separation agreement. She waives all rights to alimony, any claim to Michael's assets, and removes her name from the deed to this house. She leaves with only her personal belongings." Their lawyer, clearly outmatched, tried to protest, mumbling something about marital assets. Ben smiled faintly. "You sure you want to go that route?" "Because my next call is to the district attorney. Your client's looking at 10 years in federal prison. His daughter could be charged as an accessory. Your choice." Final update. The negotiation ended almost instantly. Faced with prison, they caved. Richard had just enough hidden assets to repay me. He sold off a few properties, liquidated investments, and wired the full amount back into my account. Within a week, Amelia signed everything. She didn't have a choice. The day she moved out was eerily quiet. She packed in silence, her face blank with anger. Not tears, not shouting, just a dull look of someone who finally realizes the game is over. The same game of control she and her father had been playing for years had finally trapped them both. Word got around fast. Her parents had to sell their mansion and downsize to a modest condo. With my money gone and Richard's reputation in ruins, their lavish life evaporated. His firm is under investigation. Odds are he'll lose his license for good. Amelia's living with them now. She had to get a real job. Sales associate at a department store. She's living the kind of life she always sneered at, without the safety net she thought would last forever. A few months later, I was driving home late one night in my new car when I stopped at a red light. I glanced to my left. It was her old SUV. Amelia was behind the wheel. For a brief second, our eyes met. She didn't look angry anymore, just hollow. The light turned green, but she didn't move. I drove on, leaving her sitting there in the car she fought so hard to control, a car that now represented everything she'd lost.